Shut the doors. If this document leaves this room, the monarchy does not survive the weekend. The command echoed through the reinforced oak panels of the West Wing, sharp enough to freeze every private secretary in the corridor. There were no diplomatic pleasantries left, no curated press releases. Across a polished mahogany table, two women stood separated by 5 centuries of constitutional tradition and a single sheet of heavy parchment that effectively rewrote the future of the British crown. For months, the public was fed a carefully sanitized story of royal unity, courtly grace, and seamless transitions. But behind locked doors, a silent, systematic war was being waged for the ultimate prize, the legal title, financial authority, and historic legacy of the Queen Consort. Now, look at the cold receipts. According to Privy Council Audit Dossier number 448B, formally filed on May 18, 2026, a structural constitutional challenge was quietly initiated within the senior ranks of the royal household. It was not a rumor, nor a whisper leaked to tabloids. It was a 22-page legal instrument, complete with red wax seals and signatures from the highest constitutional officers in the United Kingdom. At its core lay a devastating mandate: the permanent restructuring of Her Majesty Queen Camilla's royal style, sovereign funding privileges, and post-reign executive status. For the first time since the abdication crisis of 1936, the inner machinery of the palace was mobilized with stripped-down precision, and the architect behind this calculated legal maneuver was not a seasoned politician or an old guard courtier. It was Catherine, Princess of Wales. To understand how the future queen achieved what political analysts considered impossible, one must look past the glittering state banquets and inspect the paper trail King Charles III tried desperately to bury. It began with an unaccounted sum of £1.36 million transferred from the Duchy of Lancaster Trust, escalated into a bitter struggle over crown jewels valued at over £30 million, and culminated in an unprecedented emergency session of the Accession Council. The story the public was never supposed to hear begins not with a crown, but with an audit. In early November, a routine administrative review under document reference RCT 2025-991 flagged a series of startling discrepancies inside the low-vaulted archives of the Royal Collection Trust. Historical artifacts of immense national significance, including Queen Mary's Art Deco emerald brooch and the contested Greville emerald Kokoshnik tiara, had been quietly transferred from sovereign custody into a private holding entity registered under Camilla's personal trust at Ray Mill House in Wiltshire. The monetary value of these items exceeded $14.2 million, but their political value was immeasurable. Under the sovereign framework established by Queen Victoria, crown jewels designated as state assets cannot be privatized, gifted, or placed beyond the reach of the direct line of succession. Yet, documented evidence reveals that a draft deed of gift had been prepared by senior royal solicitors, attempting to secure long-term personal possession of these historic heirlooms for Camilla's direct descendants, the Parker Bowles family. When Catherine uncovered the file during her quarterly review as co-trustee of the Royal Heritage Fund, the response was immediate. She did not raise the issue at a family gathering or send a diplomatic inquiry through private secretaries. She printed the audit receipts, highlighted the legal violations under the Sovereign Grant Act of 2011, and marched directly into the King's private study. Witnesses to the exchange describe a confrontation defined by icy, unyielding precision. When Camilla asserted that her position as queen entitled her to manage household assets as she saw fit, Catherine delivered a single devastating reply. "You borrowed the crown, Camilla. You don't get to sell the legacy." That single sentence shattered any illusion of domestic harmony within Buckingham Palace. But Catherine's personal audit was only the opening move. As she probed deeper into the financial registries of the royal estates, a far bigger question emerged. Why was Camilla quietly securing tens of millions in personal assets? The answer was hidden inside a secret codicil to the King's private estate agreement, a document designed to guarantee Camilla's supreme financial independence and elevated ceremonial status long after King Charles's reign came to an end. Camilla wasn't just collecting jewels. She was attempting to lock in a lifetime of sovereign power that would legally override the authority of the future King William and Queen Catherine. As winter set in, the quiet audit transformed into an all-out civil war within the House of Windsor. The palace split into two fiercely guarded factions. On one side stood King Charles, frail, protective, and desperate to secure his wife's future comfort against an uncertain political horizon. On the other stood Prince William and Princess Catherine, who viewed the secret codicil not merely as personal greed, but as an existential breach of constitutional trust. The pressure mounted when Sovereign Grant Audit Memorandum 2026-04 revealed that an additional $3.8 million in taxpayer-funded security infrastructure and luxury estate renovations had been siphoned off to modernize Camilla's private Wiltshire retreat. The paper trail was indisputable. Funds allocated for sovereign security had been routed through third-party contractors to upgrade non-crown property. King Charles tried to broker a silent compromise. He proposed a confidential memorandum of understanding. Camilla would return the contested jewels to the Royal Collection Trust in exchange for William signing off on a guaranteed post-reign annuity of £2.5 million annually from the Duchy of Cornwall. William refused to sign. The impasse threatened to paralyze the financial governance of the monarchy. Then came the turning point that nobody in Camilla's inner circle saw coming: the intervention of Princess Anne. As Chancellor of the Royal Victorian Order and Keeper of the Family Trust, Princess Anne held unique legal authority over the internal administration of royal titles and private funds. Known for her ruthless adherence to duty and zero tolerance for institutional vanity, Anne requested a formal review of the royal precedents dating back to 1910. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon inside the Privy Purse offices at St. James's Palace, Princess Anne presented a forgotten constitutional dossier to the king. The document proved that under the Crown Private Estates Act of 1862, any financial arrangement that encumbers future sovereign revenues without the express written consent of the heir apparent is null and void. When Camilla attempted to defend her position, citing her dedicated service to the king and the monarchy over the past 2 decades, Princess Anne cut her off with brutal clarity. "This family survives on duty, Camilla, not on custom-made titles written on recycled parchment." With Anne aligning her formidable authority behind William and Catherine, the scales tipped dramatically. The family conflict had breached its internal boundaries. It was no longer a private dispute over emeralds and private estates. It had become an institutional crisis that required the intervention of the highest legal council in the realm. By early spring, the battle moved from family drawing rooms to the cold marble corridors of constitutional law. Catherine had laid the groundwork with meticulous preparation. Working in conjunction with senior constitutional advisors and top legal minds from the Cabinet Office, she assembled what would come to be known inside government circles as the Accession Integrity Dossier. The dossier exposed a fatal legal vulnerability in Camilla's official standing. When Charles and Camilla were married in 2005, a public declaration was made by Clarence House stating that Camilla would be known as Princess Consort when Charles ascended the throne. Although she was subsequently proclaimed Queen Consort upon the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the original royal prerogative lacked an explicit, permanent Privy Council order establishing her sovereign succession rights post-Charles. Catherine's legal team seized upon this oversight. Armed with Duchy Charter Clause 14, a long-ignored statutory provision governing royal title inheritance, they demonstrated that upon the passing or abdication of King Charles III, Camilla held no legal right to retain the title of Her Majesty the Queen. Without a new formal letters patent issued by the ruling monarch and ratified by Parliament, her title would legally default to a restricted, non-reigned style: Queen Dowager Consort Emeritus. This was not a symbolic distinction. It was a complete institutional neutralization. As Queen Dowager Consort Emeritus, Camilla would be stripped of all official state duties, denied access to sovereign grant funding, removed from the line of succession governance, and barred from holding any position on the Council of State. Furthermore, she would be required to vacate all royal residences, including Clarence House and royal quarters at Windsor, surrendering state-funded protection details back to the Home Office. Realizing the walls were closing in, Camilla's legal representatives attempted a counter-offensive. They submitted a confidential appeal to the Lord President of the Council, arguing that revoking her Queen Consort status post-reign would inflict irreparable damage on the prestige of the crown. They presented documented letters showing King Charles's explicit wish that Camilla maintain full sovereign rank and state privileges for the remainder of her life. The counter-appeal backfired spectacularly. When Catherine learned of the secret submission, she did not retreat. She escalated the institutional siege by invoking Section 3 of the Crown Estate Act. In a move that shocked senior courtiers, William and Catherine formally notified the Treasury and the Privy Council that, upon William's accession, the Duchy of Cornwall would immediately freeze all discretionary financial transfers to any entity associated with the Parker Bowles Trust. The paper trail was locked. The legal traps were sprung. Charles was faced with an impossible choice: protect his wife's ambition and risk an open constitutional revolt by his heir, or sign the formal decrees that would dismantle Camilla's future sovereign title forever. The climax arrived on a stark, quiet night inside the private writing room at Buckingham Palace. There were no cameras, no palace reporters, and no public statements. Gathered around the desk were King Charles III, Prince William, Princess Catherine, Princess Anne, and the clerk of the Privy Council. Laid out on the desk was Privy Council Instrument 2026-88, the definitive legal document titled The Royal Style and Precedence Determination. The instrument contained 4 non-negotiable clauses. First, Her Majesty Queen Camilla's legal style upon the conclusion of the current reign would be permanently fixed as Queen Dowager Consort Emeritus, stripped of sovereign executive authority. Second, all claims to items within the Royal Collection Trust, including the £14.2 million in contested jewelry and historic artifacts, were formally renounced in writing under a legally binding deed of reversion. Third, the financial maintenance of Ray Mill House and the Parker Bowles Estate Trust was severed completely from the sovereign grant and the Duchy of Cornwall, placing full financial responsibility onto private, non-state accounts. And fourth, effective immediately, Princess Catherine was designated as the sole senior trustee of the Royal Heritage and Sovereign Legacy Fund, giving her absolute veto power over any future alterations to crown property or royal titles. The atmosphere in the room was suffocating. King Charles looked at the parchment, his hand trembling as he held the golden fountain pen. He turned to Catherine, his voice heavy with the weight of a broken monarch. He asked if there was any room left for leniency, any compromise that could spare his wife the public and private humiliation of signed surrender. Catherine stood firm, her posture cold, precise, and entirely unyielding. Looking the king directly in the eye, she delivered the final, mic-drop declaration of the crisis. "The line of succession isn't negotiable, Your Majesty. The future belongs to those who protect it." Without another word, King Charles placed the pen to the paper and affixed his signature to Privy Council Instrument 2026-88. Moments later, a visibly shaken Camilla was brought into the room to countersign the deed of reversion. With a single stroke of blue ink, her decades-long effort to secure an irrevocable sovereign legacy vanished into the archives of history. When the signatures dried, the paper was immediately sealed inside a lead-lined dispatch box and transferred to the Parliamentary Archives at Westminster. There was no grand press conference. No explosive announcement was made to the world. To the casual observer watching state arrivals and ceremonial balcony appearances, nothing seemed to have changed. But behind the facade of ancient traditions and golden coaches, the power balance within the monarchy had undergone a seismic, permanent shift. The public sees the grand pageantry, the tailored coats, and the effortless smiles of the royal family on display. But high-stakes investigative scrutiny reveals a vastly different reality. The battle between Catherine and Camilla was never just about jewels, titles, or pride. It was a brutal, pragmatic chess match for the very soul and governance of the British monarchy. Camilla fought to consolidate her position, to build an ironclad financial and ceremonial fortress that would survive the king's final days. But she underestimated the quiet, lethal efficiency of the woman destined to take her place. Catherine did not rely on public outbursts or tearful interviews. She used the system itself, its legal documents, its constitutional charters, its financial audits, and its unyielding precedents, to dismantle her rival's power piece by piece. In the end, the paper trail Charles couldn't erase became the precise instrument of Camilla's defeat. By securing Privy Council Instrument 2026-88, Catherine did not merely protect the assets of the crown. She effectively dethroned Queen Camilla before the next reign even began. She established an undeniable truth that now echoes through the ancient halls of Windsor. Queens may come and go, but the institution belongs to those who possess the patience to master its laws, the courage to enforce its boundaries, and the strength to hold the pen when history is being written.